Hey folks, welcome back to the Land Fixer podcast. I'm your host, Logan Swanson. Today, we're going to talk more about, you guessed it, we're talking land today. I have a few different topics that I want to cover in the next few episodes, but I think people seem to really like hearing about my mistakes. And I've had a few of them. So, I picked out 6 of the many. Actually, I'm going to put 7. I just thought of another one. Of the mistakes that I have made buying land as an investment. And I'm going to go through each one and tell you which ones I've actually lost money on. And it's actually, spoiler alert, only one and only kind of. So there's a lot of different things you need to know to invest in land well. And I've covered them a fair bit. I'm going to record another video soon that just does the due diligence items for buying and selling land. But some of them, you just don't know what to look for until you experience it. There were signs that I shouldn't have engaged in all of these, but overall, I think they were still decent investments. That's kind of the beauty about land. If you're buying a discounted land property well below 50% of a reasonable retail value, it's hard to lose. Even if you get a boogered up property or something that's got issues on it, you should be able to remediate those issues, or at least sell it at a discounted price enough to make sense of the property and not lose your money. So before we get started, just a reminder, folks, if you're looking to market and sell your land, or you're looking to buy land, primelandexchange.com is the place. Okay, the new budding. Now, version 2 of our marketing service, Prime Land Exchange, is going live in the next month. If you're a land investor looking to sell, sign up. If you're a buyer, if you're looking to buy wholesale value land directly from land investors, this is where you want to go. Okay, there's going to be a section there called Spotlight Deals. These are the properties that I highly suggest investors jumping on top of, because there's either it's well below retail value, or because there's a good potential for forced appreciation, things of that nature. If you're a land investor, you need funding, check us out at landpartnerfunding.com. If you're a landowner that has a property you want to partner with me on to develop or improve, or even just sell, divide, whatever, reach out to me at thelandfixer@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook, whatever else. So we'll just get right into it. Okay, so I have 7 of these. I'm going to try to move through fast. So this first one, I have one specific example, but I've had a few similar ones. And that is, I'm looking at a property that we actually funded. So we purchased it, we own title on it, but a partner brought us the deal. And this one's in Bastrop County, Texas. This is just north of Austin. And the property itself looks great. It's got... it's a little over a half-acre lot. It's got utilities. It's not far from Austin. It's got a paved road that goes up to it. And when we were underwriting it, it's densely wooded. We sent an agent to the property. They said it looked good. They did not send us photos. We reviewed everything, including the topo map, and it looked fairly buildable, no problem. But what lied to us was the topo. Okay, so the GIS map that we were using for the county does have a topographic overlay, so that'll show the contours of the grade of the earth, meaning it'll show you where it's, hilly, steep, whatever. But that topo was not very accurate. So that property looked fine, it looked buildable, but once we brought it to market, even though it was probably what I thought was the best of the 3 property bundle that we purchased, it is still sitting on market because the topography on the map made it look very buildable, but when you're on the site, it's actually pretty steep near the back towards a creek, ravine, whatever you want to call it, and it scares everybody off. The builders look at it and they're like, oh, we might have to do some sort of special foundation or pier system, or we can't build that close to it, or there's no way to build, whatever. So on these steep properties, we've learned that we really need to get someone experienced to go walk the property before we purchase it. So that's not just a realtor go look at it, but rather, ideally a builder, someone who will be, if it's a home site, if it's something suitable to build on, or that's your ideal buyer, then you really want to get a builder out there to look at it, walk the property, it's worth $100, right? If you're going to be sinking any amount of money into deals, it's worth getting a builder to go walk the property to make sure it's actually buildable, or tell you if there's going to be a dramatic increase in cost to build. So maybe it's buildable, but it'll cost an extra 50 grand above a standard building price. That's no bueno. People are going to try to kick that. People are going to try to get the price lowered. So that's one we're still holding on to. I'm confident we'll make a profit on it. May not be a big profit. Second, this is a new one that came up. I've never actually, well, not never. I have kind of dealt with this before, but we just bought a property out in Kentucky. We thought it was a home run, slam dunk, no problem. And first thing we find out is what looked to be a shed or maybe an old outbuilding on the property is actually a home, which we believe has squatters in it. We had sent a drone photographer out there, again, assuming that he had surveyed the whole property and kind of would tell us if there was something like this going on. But we were unawares. We brought it to closing, and now we're in the process of cleaning the mess up. You know, for me, it's kind of a headache, but I love having the ability to go through every one of these issues so that next time I encounter squatters or people squat on a property that I currently own, I'm going to know what to do. And pretty much all of these things come down to the same process. Like, okay, well, we're going to call the local sheriff's office, ask them, what do we do? They referred us to the attorneys. The attorneys told us what to do, exactly how that would look with the court, yada, yada, yada. So we found a solution to it already. It may take longer than we were hoping for, but we bought this property at a pretty good discount. So we're confident we'll have enough time and money to remediate the issue and still sell it for a fairly decent profit. Okay, the third one's kind of unique. I've never dealt with this before, but we bought a staunch of properties out in a small town in Texas, and I think the guy sold us a total of 4 properties. We bought them for around $700 each. They're just tiny, middle of nowhere home sites, and we sold all of them really quickly. But one of them that we sold on terms had it looked like an old home foundation on it, and that's what he told us. He said it used to be a house. Records in this area were terrible. I could have dug deeper into it, but I kind of trusted the guy. He seemed to be a local. He seemed to be above board and honest with us about everything else in the transaction. So I said, all right, if it's an old house foundation, who cares, right? Maybe somebody wants to reuse it. That could actually be a benefit in a really low income area. So anyways, we bought it, we sold it on a note, and somebody that we sold it to, actually talking about squatters, they're not supposed to build on it until the note's paid off, but they went ahead and rolled a mobile home right onto it. And this happened to be in like the quote unquote city square of this tiny town. The tiny town has like 2 elected officials, and one of them called us and they're like, hey, you can't put a mobile home there. And by the way, that's not an old home foundation, that's an old gas station foundation. And they said, you might actually want to talk to the Texas Department of Environmental Control, TDEC, because there's underground storage tanks that have not been remediated. So they put these, any gas station is going to have these huge underground storage tanks. And once a gas station goes out of business, well, somebody has to go in there and remediate those tanks. And the previous owner never did. He just stopped paying taxes on it. It went to the city. The city then sold it at a tax auction to the guy that I bought the properties from, and no one remediated it. So I get in contact with TDEC. They go out there, inspect the tanks, and they say, hey, there's no real problem with them, but you do have to get them cleared up. They told me the cost of remediation was going to be $18,000 to $20,000. We sold it for $15,000. So there's no way that we were going to remediate these tanks. So we got in contact with the people that were buying from us. We switched them to a different property. It was actually a better property for them. They were happy. And then we went back to the seller, the guy that sold us the properties. He stopped taking our calls. So all we did was just deed the property back to him. Very simple. So overall, we bought 4 properties, $700 a piece. We deeded one back, so we'll count that as a $700 loss. So we are $2,800 in on 3 properties, and we sold those for a grand total of about $45,000. Each of those lots we sold for $15,000 each. So $45,000 on a $2,800 investment. No biggie, no problem. I'm happy to deed that headache right back to that person. But now we know if I'm ever looking at a property that is suspicious, maybe it's a street corner or anything that may make me think, and I've actually looked into this a few times and caught myself, but you go through and you see the previous owners, and if any of them are like an energy company or whatever else, or if you have any suspicions, you can call TDEC, TCEQ is what it is, the Texas Commission for Environmental Quality, TCEQ. And they'll tell you if there's ever been registered underground storage tanks there, and if there have been, buyer beware. Make sure you understand exactly what's going on there. All right, where are we at? Wow, I'm talking too slow. All right, 4 more I'm going to try to get through. 1, adverse possession. So I bought a property. I buy a lot of really affordable properties. I usually don't run affordable properties through a title company. I do my own independent research. I have a guy that does it for me very affordably, and he missed something. When I went to go sell this property, we sent it to title, and we found out that somebody in the past had filed adverse possession against our property, and it did not show up on a title report. Now, the process for cleaning it up really was not too bad, because even though he filed for adverse possession, it never went before a judge. No real civil proceedings ever moved forward. So we were able to go in there and just say, hey, we own this property. He has no right to do this. And we had it cleaned up for just a few $100s and not a lot of headache. But that is a big, big deal. We could have lost, it's a big deal if it's an expensive purchase. This one was an inexpensive purchase. We bought the property for $1,500. We were selling it for $15,000. Not a big amount of money. So even if we lost $1,500, I wouldn't have cried about it. But I think it cost us $500 in legal fees to remediate it. No problem. We're $2,000 into a property that we're selling for $15,000. Same area, similar area. This is out in West Texas, where we buy a lot of 5, 10, or not so much anymore, but we used to buy a lot of 5, 10, 20, 50 acre properties out there. We bought a property that looked great. It was a little ways off of the beaten road in a county called Culberson County, Texas. A 5 acre tract, about a quarter mile, half mile off of one of the few paved roads that run through the entire county. And everything looked great. We knew it had legal deeded access to the property, but we didn't send anyone out there ahead of time to ensure that you can actually get out to the property. And what we found out is that this property, even though it had a legal deeded access, we had a bad neighbor somewhere up the line that had put in a gate. We don't know whose gate it was. And there was a single key that unlocked it, and behind this gate were thousands and thousands of parcels of land that all should have legal access. So in that case, we actually didn't do a lot more digging. We ended up, I think someone just came onto our website and bought it. I don't know. We had a few people try to go out there and visit the property and say they ran into this gate. But what that had us do is, in our underwriting now in areas like this where somebody could just gate off, kind of a rough access property like this one was, we either use Google Street View, or we're going to send someone out there ahead of time to make sure that they can actually just drive to the property. And in areas that are somewhat impoverished, this is not very expensive. You can go Craigslist, pay someone $50, $75 to go out there to the property and snap some photos with their phone. So they're going to send you some photos, but really what you're making sure is someone can actually get out to the property. So that legal access was resolved. All right, 2 more. Okay, we have time. So one of them, we flipped an airfield. No, it was an airstrip. So the airstrip itself was actually not, it was a cool deal. But what it taught us is to be very careful when you're flipping contracts, okay? We almost never engage in this, and it's something that I really don't like, but is very common amongst land flippers, where you negotiate with a land seller, we'll call it the A to B side, and you say, hey, I'll buy your property for $50,000 or $100,000. I'll just use this one, $100,000. But you need to give me 6 months to do due diligence and all this sort of stuff. And I don't really know how people get like multiple months to close. But then the investor, myself, would go and find a buyer on the BC side. And then when that BC side buyer was ready to purchase, we'd either use those funds or some sort of very short-term lender in the middle to then purchase the property, then sell the property almost at the same time and make a spread. Most land investors are looking to make like $10,000. Boy, is it a headache for $10,000. But at any rate, there was no sneakiness involved. This client came to me. I had bought and sold a couple properties from him in the past, so we had something of a relationship already. And he said, hey, I have this 100-acre, I forget what it is, 120-acre property out in Utah that has an airfield on it, or an airstrip on it. He had the dream in the past of creating this airplane community, which I'd never heard of, but apparently it's not uncommon, where people can just have private planes, fly them in, and kind of experience this community of pilots. And I was straight with him. I was like, hey, man, this is a very unique property. What do you want for it? He said he wants $100,000 for it. And I was pretty sure I could probably sell it for like 150 ish, maybe $200,000 if I took my time on it. But it was really weird. It was risky. The legal access was kind of sticky. It was there, but it wasn't really a road. It was hard to get to. You needed a 4x4. There were no comps around this property. So it was really hard for me to really say, like, I know this is the value of the property. So what I said is, hey, I'll help you do this, but here's the deal. I'm gonna go sell it. I'm not gonna buy it from you until I can sell it. And he was happy to do that because he said he's been trying to sell it using brokers, realtors, kind of traditional routes, and it never has had a single person express interest in buying it. So we agreed, we signed the contract. He knew exactly what I was doing, that I was going to find an end buyer and that I was going to make whatever was in the middle. So this was a completely transparent conversation for him. Now what happened was I started, of course, doing all of my marketing, which was a lot. I was doing paid social media marketing. I had it up on all the different websites. I blasted it to my list. Yeah, and I had a whole bunch of traction and interest almost immediately because it was such a unique property. And I think I had some pretty good creative over it. I think I said, like, Joe Rogan would love this property, right? Because it was like hunting and out in the wilderness and whatever. And it just blew up. It got a whole bunch of attention. And I started sending people to the property, one after another, after another, after another. And people would be so interested, and they'd go to the property and they would say they loved it, and then time and time again they would just kind of disappear, not communicating with me, which is very odd. Typically, once I engage with someone, I'm usually able to get them to the finish line pretty quickly. But long story short, I talked and got leads and we sent them to the property, and eventually I found out that this guy was just sitting at the property meeting people and trying to squeeze me out of the deal. So I had it listed at this price, he was trying to get it at a lower price, and eventually he did. One of the leads that I sent to the property, he bartered with and negotiated with for $120,000 after they had agreed to $150,000 with me, and he tried to squeeze me out of the deal. And I knew what he was doing, so I immediately filed a notice of interest on the property. I sent him a message directly saying, hey, you can no longer sell this property. I just clouded title. Nobody's going to be able to transact over this property. You owe me what I deserve on this property. Long story short, he paid me out, sold the property. I think I made $15,000 or $20,000. It wasn't a big spread, but when you are involved in that contract flipping, it is so easy for someone to try to take advantage of you, for it to go sideways, for it to get messy, and I do not like those transactions. And that's why we always suggest actually buying the property. All right, and the last one I'm going to cover today, and I have more. Maybe I'll do a second episode on this, but the last one I'm going to cover is the dried lake. So I was operating an area out in California that I was very unfamiliar with. But I saw what I like. I like to see a bunch of, lake lots around a big, beautiful lake that I think I can buy affordably. And I did not do the proper underwriting or anything really. I bought 3 of these things. I think they're $3,000-$4,000 a piece, thinking no problem. I was going to be able to flip them for $14,000 to $18,000. And what I did not know is that when you looked at the lake through the GIS maps, it appeared to have water. But over the course of the 2 or 3 years that the imagery had not been updated, that lake almost completely dried out. So now this is a lake community around a big hole, and the demand had gone through the floor, and I just did not do the research. This was kind of early on in my investing career. And what a headache. So I still have one of these left, actually. I sold the other 2. I think we broke even on those 2. And this last one, I'm confident we will break even on, maybe make $1,000. It just might take some time. So I did not lose money on this deal yet, though there is a possibility that I lose money on these dried lake deals. So this is just a few of the many, many ways that you can make mistakes flipping land that don't show up in the most common underwriting, whatever, due diligence templates that you might find. If you're paying a third party to do due diligence, they might miss these things, or they just might not even know to look for these things. All right, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed laughing at my misery, some of the many mistakes that I've made here land investing. Again, I'll reiterate, if you need to buy discounted wholesale value land directly from land investors, go to primelandexchange.com. We are going to be launching in about a month. Sign up, okay? Because we're going to start sending out email blasts and everything. If you need funding, you're a land investor that needs funding, check us out at landpartnerfunding.com. If you want to get in touch with me directly, email me at thelandfixer@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook, whatever else. And if you are a landowner and you need help developing, subdividing your land, I'm happy to partner with you. Just reach out to me. Again, thank you all for your time. It was a pleasure hanging out with you. Cheers.